Today, I am absolutely privileged to welcome as my first ever guest at Coffee at the Castle, Tony Salentino. He's been a friend of mine for about 35 years now. He's the man who I class as having turned the word humble into an art form, and that will pretty much come across in what we're going to talk about today, because today is all about Tony Salentino. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
Tony, first and foremost, as a father and a grandfather, was a stalwart of the mortgage intermediary industry for 30 plus years, receiving numerous industry awards, topping them off when in 2009 he was entered into the who's who of Britain's business elite, and finally in 2011 becoming a lifetime member. Now 63, I believe. Is that right, Tony?
That's correct, yeah.
Now 63. Having retired at 58, which was an event actually mourned within his industry, Tony does a bit of football coaching. Let me explain. Does a bit. It really doesn't quite cover it. Tony Salentino never just does a bit in anything that he does. So Tony was born in the UK in Watford, and at the tender age of, what was it, Tony?
14 and a half.
14 and a half. He moved back to Italy, or didn't move back to Italy, moved to Italy with his parents. He'd already been in England, signed to Watford FC, because he loved his football, but was signed to Watford FC. He then went to Italy and got signed to another football team. The football team was?
US Salernitana.
Can you say that again?
I can. Yep, US Salernitana.
US Salernitana. He was a professional footballer, having represented Watford schools at football, cricket and basketball. This was a bit of a trying time for Tony, and we're going to talk about that as well. But in years to come, he became a coach, coaching the thing that he loved most of all, football. And he started off with the Hedge End Hornets. Then he went on to coach a girls' football team under the auspices of the Saints Academy, moving on up, gaining the top football qualification in coaching, and working for the Saints Academy, or working alongside the Saints Academy for the last 20 years. Tony has worked alongside the likes of James Ward-Prowse, Calum Chambers, and England's recent Euro team member, Luke Shaw, who said of Tony, "He taught me everything I know." What an accolade. Tony, once again, thank you for coming on the show.
Not sure about the "he taught me everything I know," Paul, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't think those words came out of Luke's mouth. I think they may have come out of a reporter's mouth. But no, it was a pleasure working with Luke. I'm not going to underestimate his achievements. And I think the reality is, we play, as coaches, a very, very small part in their development. But hopefully it has that bit of impact. And when you add all those little bits together, hopefully that helps them along their journey.
So what came first? The skills that you learned as a coach, or the skills that you learned as a business person? Or is it an intermingling?
I'm not sure about what actually came first. I think it's the skills you learn as a human being, really. And I don't think they need to be, in my opinion, particularly different, whether you're in business or whether you're dealing with young elite athletes. I think as long as you're sincere and honest about what you do and what you say, and you care, I think for me, probably if I look back and think, okay, what would you like people to say about you, is from a football point of view, it would be, I'm not going to be the best tactician, I'm not going to be the best coach, but if they could remember me for somebody who cared about them, then that's fine. And the same in business. Was I the best boss? Probably not. Did I make some bad decisions? Yeah, probably did. Yeah, definitely did. But if they can remember me as somebody who cared and genuinely cared about them, not by words but by actions, then that's good enough.
I can say without a shadow of doubt, having known you for as long as I have, and having listened to people speak about you over the years, that is exactly what they will remember Tony Salentino for.
Well, then I'm happy with that.
So let's go back a bit, because it wasn't always Tony Salentino, it was Antonio Salentino. That's how you were christened, born in Watford.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, when we were off camera, you were saying to me, now I did know some of this because of our friendship, but some of the stuff I didn't know.
Okay.
Your parents retired and they decided to move back to Italy,
Yeah.
And you were 14 at the time?
Yeah, just over 14. Yeah, it was in the June, so I was 14 in the March. In fact, end of June, just as the school year was ending. It was just before the school year ended, and yeah, in those days, this is 1975. In Italy, females could retire at 55 and get a state pension. And although mum and dad had lived here for nearly 20 years, they sort of came over in the late 50s. Mum never really settled here, if I'm honest. Dad probably did a bit more. So as soon as mum was able to retire, they sort of used that as a trigger to go back, and go back to the area that my father's family were from, was Salerno, which is where the team Salernitana is from. And that was probably, one of the toughest times as a young man. Was a tough time because my Italian was limited, having been born and bred in England. So although I could speak a bit of Italian, I couldn't read or write Italian. So going back there then, having to go to school and at the same time get a bit of private tuition from a local teacher who would do like a lesson a week for me, just to help me read the language and to write the language, was quite challenging. On top of that, I was playing, so I was training a lot as well. So my days would often be get up, have breakfast, take a packed lunch, go to school, from school go training, from training come home, go and have a private education lesson. So that was actually initially it was twice a week that I would do that, and then as time went on, that sort of reduced to once a week. So yeah, that was quite challenging, I'm not going to lie. Probably not the most enjoyable time of my life as a teenager, because new country, new ways, and the language was a bit of a challenge. And also the other thing there in the schooling system is you needed to achieve a certain grade to move on to the following year. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure you reach those grades. So yeah, difficult time. 16 and a half, before my 17th birthday. Made a pretty big decision, which was again difficult because I was an only child. Parents had me quite late in life, so obviously that was quite a big decision to come back to England.
And that's exactly what you did. Came back to England on your own, and started afresh. But I'm guessing the 2 years you spent in Italy, they were a good grounding for the work ethic that you've had throughout your entire life.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, having to learn to read and write a different language at 14 and a half, as well as going to school and trying to achieve grades. Was that my biggest drive? Probably not, no, because I wanted to be a pro footballer. I was fortunate enough to be offered a contract at Salerno, so my dad was overjoyed because he played football to a decent level when he was younger, so of course it ticked a big box for him, for me to be signing a contract in his hometown, but I think in the back of my mind there was always this, I'm not sure I'm going to settle here, I think I want to go back to England. Yeah, that was tough. It was tough, I'm not going to lie, it was tough. And it was tough coming here. I stayed with my uncle for a few months in St Albans. But again, St Albans, Watford, I wanted to be back in Watford. That's where I was as a schoolboy, that's where my friends were, that's where I went to school. So yeah, managed to find a bedsit and moved into a bedsit with quite an elderly couple, Jock and Fran, bless them. And they sort of kept their eye on me for a few years. Yeah.
Going back to that time, if you could go back now, knowing what you know about the successes you've had, I mean, who's who, my friend? That's amazing. Would you have changed anything?
I think the reality is, from a football point of view, I think where I was in Italy, I came across as quite a different type of player, because it's a very technical game in Italy, and as it was in the 70s, coming from England, it was a much more physical game. So I think I probably stood out a little bit, not because I was any better than the players I was with, not at all, but I was different, and I probably gave a bit more aggression in the game. My intensity to win the ball back was so. I think because I was different, I feel sometimes would I have gone further in football? Although I came back to England and I signed semi-pro. The reason I signed semi-pro, I was 17. I was on my own, trying to earn a living because I had bills now to pay. I had rent to pay. So it would have been challenging and difficult financially to just try to go and get a pro deal because that takes process. I could get semi-pro pretty quickly, literally one training session and I was offered a semi-pro contract at Chalfont. I was fortunate that I had some mates that played there who obviously spoke highly of me, and again, sometimes fortune plays a part. The coach at Chalfont at the time was somebody who knew me from when I was a schoolboy at Watford. So there was an instant sort of connection. But yeah, sometimes I wonder if I'd have stayed in Italy, would my football career have advanced? I don't think it would have helped me. Had it not, I think I would not have had the opportunities in business, financial services to have progressed that career because, again, Italy is it was a very different world at the time.
So the average person's view of the young thrusting footballer is loads and loads of women, fast cars, all this sort of thing. That's not the Tony Salentino I know. So when did you meet Carla?
Well, that's something else that wouldn't have happened. So, of course, absolutely it was the right decision. I met Carla at an Italian wedding. Her cousin, who just happened to be an old family friend of my mum and dad's, and they helped me find the bedsit, funnily enough, that I stayed in. It was literally the house opposite theirs in the same crescent. So I went as a friend of the family, I guess. And yeah, met Carla at the wedding. That would have been in I was 20, so 1981.
We're going to test you on this with her.
Yeah. 1981 we met at Lena's wedding. Lena and Ivor, who got married, who are Lena's her cousin, who we still see. And yeah, it was an interesting event because, as you can imagine, in the sort of early 80s, in particular with the Italian girls, they had very protective fathers. Not that I would associate with that at all, of course. No. But they're very protective fathers. And so it was quite tricky, even at the wedding, trying to get to know her a little bit because you could feel all these eyes on you every time you went close, But no, that's when I met Carla, 1981. And we were fortunate enough, I was fortunate enough to marry her in the 30th of June 1984. So we've just celebrated 40 years of married bliss.
Is that Ruby?
It is Ruby.
It is Ruby, isn't it?
After
my
your daughter, of course.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you married Carla.
Yeah.
I know you have 3 gorgeous daughters, and the names are?
Amazing daughters. Helena, Victoria and Emily, who are just fantastic.
And they've blessed you with grandchildren?
They have. Yeah, 5 grandchildren. Yeah, you're going to test me in order, are you?
No, we can do. It's like a football team.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's Elodie, Rafferty, Louis, Ottilie, who's the latest, who's only a few months old, and Victoria also has Marietta. That's her first.
Well, I was privileged to meet Marietta the other day when
we
popped over.
You were. That was lovely.
Absolutely stunning. Okay, so you come to the UK. You're in this bedsit.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go for work?
Oh, at the time when I was in the bedsit, I was cycling to London Coney, which is the other side of St Albans, so 9 miles each way. It's an 18-mile round trip, cycling there and back every day, winter, summer, etc. for, I would say 2 years almost of cycling, which was great because I was quite heavily into my football, so it's a fantastic way to keep fit, and I was without question the fittest I'd ever been, while I was there. Started my first job as a work study officer, so trainee work study officer at the time, which, in the old days they called it the time and motion man. Which was an interesting start in my career, working. And then later enough, in fact, in 1984, I joined Avco Trust.
And that's where we met.
We did.
And if I remember rightly, Avco sponsored West Ham at the time, didn't they?
They did, and isn't it funny how fate works out? So West Ham did sponsor, Avco Trust did sponsor West Ham, and I can't remember what year it was, but they decided that before the West Ham Southampton game at Southampton at the Old Dell, they decided they would do a sponsors six-a-side game. So before the kickoff, myself and a few boys from Avco Trust, so Trevor Smith, Keith Dearlin, I'm trying to remember some of the others, but they put us on, and we played a little six-a-side game before, and it was quite funny because the game turned out to be extremely boring, and halfway through the second half the crowd started shouting, singing "Bring back the sponsors." so that was and obviously at the time I was living in Harrow at the time, we'd moved to Harrow then, isn't it funny how fate can sometimes play a part in your life? Who would have thought I would end up living in Southampton at that time? Wasn't on the radar. Not at all. Not at all.
So Avco Trust, then you're in financial services.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yes.
Then you left Avco and went where?
Left Avco, was approached to come to Southampton through a company called Advanced Finance Group. Mike, a good friend of mine still, Mike Hill, had been headhunted to join them. He was based in Southampton already, and they were looking for an operations manager at the time. We were approached, and they put together a package at the time that was very reasonable. It included a relocation. At the time, Carla was about 8 months pregnant with Victoria, so we had baby Helena. It was about a year and a half, we decided that we would try and make the move. So I actually moved down. My first day was the 2nd of February 1990. Victoria came along on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. So that was an interesting evening, because Mike and his wife, I said to him, well, look, as I was staying with Mike temporarily, and I said, look, it's Valentine's Day, why don't you take your missus out? I said, I can babysit. They had a daughter called Stacey at the time, and he went, oh, would you? I said, yeah. I said, go on, take your wife out, it'd be nice. And because I said, I'm going to be here on my own, so you might as well. Halfway through the meal, he got a phone call, or the restaurant, because obviously no real mobiles in those days, got a call from me saying, mate, can you get home, please? Because my wife's just got into labour. Mike turned up back at the house with his plate of food and his pint of beer that the restaurant kindly wrapped up for him. And I jumped in the car and got there about 15 minutes before Victoria was born.
Okay. So you come down, Advanced Finance Group, Dave Burrows, Mike Hill, all these things going on.
Yeah.
How would you go from there to being in 2009 who's who for the business elite of the UK?
Yeah, well, I mean, I worked for Advance for I think 5 years, and then things changed, and worked for another company for a few years before really joining up with Mike and Damien under the Complete umbrella. Complete Mortgage and Loan Services it was then. It was a partnership when I first came across. And between the three of us, we gradually started to build the business, and along that journey, a company called PMPA was formed, Professional Mortgage Packagers Association. So we were mortgage packagers, and whilst we grew the business, we also realised that maybe the industry needed some form of consistency.
And lobbying, I guess, as well.
And lobbying, yeah, absolutely. And we wanted it to be seen more as an industry rather than, sort of seen part of financial services. I think it held quite a bespoke place in the industry.
Yeah.
It was decided that I would represent Complete with the PMPA. And we formed, there was about 4 or 5 other businesses that were involved in there. We gradually, I guess, improved the status of the industry. And as we were doing that, there was some recognition. The business PMPA itself grew and grew as well. We ended up with about 20 members in the end, which I thought was, at the time, quite an achievement. And through that, through the various hurdles you have to go through for who's who, and various targets and growth you need to produce as well, we somehow, managed to achieve all the criteria. And it was a real surprise to get a letter through the post saying, you're basically in it. Do you want to buy the book to confirm it? Which obviously you do.
Get the highlighter pen out.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, that was a surprise. It wasn't something, if I'm perfectly honest, I really knew a lot about. It wasn't something we would really drive into try and achieve. But through the PMPA, we sort of managed to get there, and it was fantastic. In fact, in my comments in there, the first people to thank are Mike and Damien, because although my name's on there, I always felt that was probably a little bit unfair. I was the director of PMPA, but really I was there representing myself, Damien and Mike. And
but that goes to speak to what I'm talking about, the humbleness of Tony Salentino.
Well, I think it would have been fairer for us all three to be in there.
Couldn't agree with you more.
So although it comes under my name, as I said, I think the recognition should be for all of us, really.
So now you're doing the coaching pretty much full time. You haven't stopped. Retirement has not meant retirement for you. I know Carla spends an awful lot of time looking after the babies, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
You're as retired as you're going to be. I mean, you'll be playing football until you drop down, my friend, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. Well, I think that time's come. The knees have finally sort of given way a little bit. So, I'm going to have a little op next in a couple of weeks. So hopefully that will sort that out and we can get back on the grass and feel a little bit more involved. But yeah, listen, I was kicking the ball as soon as I could walk as a baby, and as a child, and without question, as probably with my dad's encouragement as well as a toddler. It's always been something I've enjoyed. Is coaching the same as playing? No, I absolutely hate the fact that I can't play, but it's not a bad alternative when you're at such a great club. And Southampton as a club, as an academy, is a fantastic place to be. And I can't believe I've been there over 20 years. It's like, wow, firstly, where's that time gone? And B, what a privilege to work at, in a Cat 1 academy, for 20 years. And some of the experiences that I've had, the tours that we've done from Dallas in 2008 to Mumbai in 2019, two that really stand out, that were amazing life experiences for us as coaches, but also for the young players. For the young players to experience what they did in Dallas in 2008, where we went all the way through to the final, losing 1-0 to Barcelona, which great experience. To Mumbai. Just the experience of being in India, having not been there before, was such an eye-opener and a fantastic life lesson for the players to really see what the world is like outside of England.
Yep. To realise how lucky we actually are.
100%. Oh my gosh. So humbling in terms of the smiles on those players' faces, and then visiting where they lived. It was just unbelievable. And I think that's something the players will never forget, I don't think. And I think that's what's probably adds to the enjoyment of working in an elite environment. As a club like Southampton, they don't just invest in the player as a player. They invest in the young men as young men and give them life experiences through tours, through, as an example, next week, we're taking our under-15s up to the Lake District for 5 days to do their Duke of Edinburgh Bronze Award.
Nice.
Now, you wouldn't think a football club would do something like that. If you speak to average Joe, go, you train them, you do. Well, no, we do a lot more than that. We have full-time teachers to educate them when they come in to our programme on a day release programme. They spend 3 hours with teachers. So we make sure their education's right. When they sign scholarships, they not only do football, they also do their they do their coaching badges, they do a referees course, they do other things as well as just the football, and I think that's another part of the reason why I love it so much, because it's creating good human beings as well.
The passion shines through, but it shines through in just about everything you do. As I said earlier on in the interview, you don't do anything by halves. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. We're going to wrap it up there. I want to thank you for being the first guest on this show.
Pleasure, Paul.
One last thing.
Sure.
If there was one piece of advice based on your knowledge for the last 63 years that you could give your 14-year-old self, what would it be?
I think it would be probably believe in yourself and follow your dreams, because you never know.
Absolutely fantastic. I would expect nothing less from you, Tony. It's been and will continue to be a privilege to be your friend. Thank you.
Likewise. Cheers.